Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go.
This morning we're talking about a quote, which is actually one of my very, very favourite quotes. I love it so much. And I think it just sparks a really interesting conversation. And the quote, cannot remember who the hell it's by. I think it's by somebody called David Henry Thoreau, I think. Anyway, the quote is, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So I'll say that one more time. It's don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Now, I just absolutely love this quote, and I did a mini-sode this Saturday just gone, and the heading of the mini-sode, the subject of the mini-sode was want to help the world, ? Focus on yourself. And I think the point of this quote is, or the way that I sort of interpret it, is that actually the best way for any of us to help the world is to focus on ourselves and basically become the best damn version of ourselves that we possibly can. Because actually what the world needs is more happy people. Because if the world had more happy people in it, the world would be a happier place. It's as simple as that. If more people were more content, more peaceful, more chilled, happier, more joyful, there is no doubt that there would be a knock-on effect across the world. So actually, I just think it is such a brilliant quote. And the thing is, at the moment, clearly there is so much shit going on in the world at the moment. And, what's going on in the States, don't even get me started, but there is obviously a lot of terrible stuff going on in the world. But actually, what are we doing to help by, tuning into the news 24/7 and moaning and complaining and going on and on and on and on about the state of the world and how awful it is? That actually does nothing to help the world. That is what so many of us do. We just focus on the negative news. We have conversations about it. We go on and on and on about it. We focus on it all the time. And actually, what we want to, and unless we're actually doing something, taking action to help, we're so much better to take our focus off of the news and off of what is going on. That doesn't mean we don't care, but we're so much better if we take our focus off of those things and focus on ourselves and focus on making ourselves the happiest, most joyful, most positive version of ourselves that we possibly can. Because actually, I think there's a bit of a thing where we think that if we're really engaged in the news and we're up to date on absolutely everything, we know every single news story, and we know exactly what's going on, and we know every single thing that Donald Trump is currently doing, and we're so informed, we sort of think that if we're really, really informed, that somehow that means that we're doing something really good and that we're kind of helping by just being informed. And actually that's bollocks, because just by being informed doesn't mean we're actually doing anything to help the world. So I just thought that this was a really interesting topic and something to think about on this Monday morning. So over to you, Polly Warren.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. This is a really fantastic quote. And I think it just helps you to really just start thinking about yourself and what does make you happy, what does bring you joy.
Yeah.
I think for so many of us, and this was me for so many years, although yeah, I mean, it really has been me for so many years. You just kind of go through the motions of life. It's like you're on some sort of autopilot and you're just doing what you feel you probably should do and what the world expects of you
Mm-hmm.
to, you need to bring in money, you support who you need to support, you support yourself. But actually, is that genuinely bringing you joy?
Mm.
And the thing is, when we get into that autopilot mode of just doing what we feel we ought to do, doing the shoulds, actually it's draining. It drains our energy from us, and so it doesn't give us any energy to radiate outwards into the wider world. So why
Mm,
I love this quote so much is actually because if you focus on doing the things which really ignite that joy within you. We all know what that's like. We feel it energizes us, and we can then radiate that energy out into the world. It's like I just
mm,
see like these little radiators, these little beings with their kind of shining brightly out in the world. And that's what happens when you are focusing on your joy
yeah,
rather than sucking the life out of everybody else, because that,
yeah.
and I've been there, I've totally been there when you're doing a
Same.
job which is literally sucking your soul, and it just makes you feel heavy, it makes you feel depleted, and you drain the energy from everybody else, and that's not what the world needs. It
Yeah,
drains your creativity, it drains your thoughts, it drains everything.
yeah,
And I think the problem is so many of us are stuck in that mode of doing stuff we don't really want to do. We're stuck in that cycle because we're doing things because we
mm,
have to, we have to earn money. So we have to do a job. We've got a good enough job. It's giving us the money, and we get in that cycle. And don't get me wrong, we've got, everybody needs to earn a living, but can we find ways, whether that is through your job or whether that's through other ways,
yeah,
that's just through hobbies and things which light you up, which bring that joy, which make you feel totally alive and get into that flow state? Because when you're in that flow state, that is what radiates out to everybody else, and that is what is going to serve the world much better, because that is when you're going to have the creative ideas, and you're going
yeah.
to input more and probably serve more and have a greater fulfillment from what you're doing.
Yeah, completely. And actually, I think this really ties into something I've been talking a lot about recently, which is the idea of living a more intentional life. Because I think when you mentioned just now how, sometimes like when we're living a life where we're not really being intentional, in other words, we're just letting life kind of blow us along. We don't feel like we have any control, and we're just kind of going along with it. That, I think, when we're in that frame of mind and when we're living from that place, that is when we tend to then look at everything external and start, meddling in all the stuff that is going on in the world. Because I think when you're not particularly happy, when you're not particularly fulfilled, when and you're sort of looking at the world and thinking, oh God, it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of the other. When we're living in that mode, we tend far more, I think, to focus on things like the news. It's like we need that distraction. So, we sort of fill our mind with stuff that doesn't necessarily help us, but we feel like it makes us feel better because it's kind of distracting us from ourselves and from our own lives. Whereas when we make the decision to live in a more intentional way, when we're living with a vision of our future, which is what I talk about, I've been talking about a lot recently because it's something I just believe in more and more and more and more. We want to live with a vision of our future in mind. We want to have this vision in our heads of where we're going. And we want to be defined by that vision, as opposed to being defined by all of the limiting stories from our past and all of that kind of stuff. Because when we do that, when we live from that, when we live from those limiting beliefs, that is when we tend to fall into these sort of bad habits of watching the news 24/7, getting really annoyed by silly little things, and just being in that sort of more negative mindset. Whereas when you're being guided and when you're being defined by that vision of your future, you aren't so you're distracted by that, but in a really good way. So you're not so obsessed with everything else that is going on in
Mm.
the external world. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
total sense.
Do you know what I
Because
mean?
when you are not particularly happy in doing whatever it is you're doing, that's when you become very judgy of
Yeah,
yourself, and that's when you're probably really beating yourself up with your internal, what in your internal world and your internal thoughts. But you also become very judgy and
yeah,
judgmental
yeah,
of everybody else around you, everything around you, what's going on. You're far more likely to criticize
yeah,
others, the world, the news, the politics, and kind of get stuck in that wheel of negativity,
yeah,
because you're projecting externally. Whereas if you're
yeah,
internally really joyful and happy and fulfilled, then there's actually, it's very hard to be judgy on everybody else, because actually it's more like you're radiating your good vibes outwards, and that's catching, and then you attract more of those good people, those good things towards you. It really does work like that.
It
And
really
I'm not
does.
saying, and I'm not saying it's easy, because we all go in, I don't know about you, but I go in real cycles. You know, some, most of the time I hope my default is pretty upbeat, and I kind of know where I'm going, and I'm very fortunate because I've created this life for myself, but I do what I love. I do what I love. There are moments, don't get me wrong, where I get frustrated and things aren't going my way, and it's like fuck that, it's really annoying. And then, but what I notice now is when I do start to get into that mode of, oh my God, life's not working out for me, blah, 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 I can catch myself very quickly now, because
Yeah,
I've trained myself
yeah,
to have that awareness. And that's what's so important. If you can have that awareness and pull yourself back and go, actually, let's take a step back. Let's broaden the perspective of where I'm coming from here. And this is what it's all about. It's about perspective.
yeah,
When you're not in that flow state, when you're not happy, you're generally probably going to be quite stressed.
yeah,
And when you're quite stressed, very easily you become much more hyper vigilant, because if you think when you're in a stress state, if you needed to run for survival, you're only focused on one thing, and that can be very easy to, as you say, focus on the news, focus on the negative stuff, and that's just a physiological response to
yeah,
stress. But when actually your default mode is much more open, relaxed, um, you tend to be within your window of tolerance, and that is when creativity flows. You have a much more, you're able to see the bigger picture. You're not able to see the bigger picture when you're really in a state of negativity and stress, but you
mm,
can when you when you're in a really good place. It makes
yeah,
such a massive difference. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it is a physiological response
yeah.
to how you are feeling. So I suppose, Lucy, we could maybe talk about if someone, how do we get to that point? How do you create it? You said that you put your
Well,
blinkers on, you think about your vision, but then on day-to-day stuff, what do you do? Let's just maybe say what we do to try and create that environment for ourselves. A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
well, we have to make a decision to start focusing on different things. It really is as simple as that. We have to, but it starts with becoming aware of what we're actually doing in our own heads. The first thing we have to do is realize what we're doing and how we're thinking, and how we're thinking and what we're focusing on is causing us to feel a certain way. It's really actually very simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. And actually, one sort of interesting thing, I think we've talked about this before, is the fact that it's actually so much easier to be negative. It's so much easier to be a sheep and go along with what everyone else is doing, because most people are talking about, oh, the fucking state of the world and politics and the cost of living, and that's what most people are talking about. Like, you walk into a freaking coffee shop or whatever it is, and people aren't going, oh yes, and everything is so wonderful and blah 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 blah. But actually, what's really interesting is that the world is both of those things. The world is both really fucking shit and in a completely shit state. It's also really beautiful, with a lot of amazing, wonderful things, and wonderful, amazing people doing wonderful, amazing things. We get to choose which version of the world we actually want to see. We have to choose to put on the glasses that have the right lens, and that is what we have to do. And then, so yeah, it's really a question of making that decision and being vigilant every day. We've talked about this so many times on Monday Motivation. It's like we have to check in with our thoughts. I check in with myself multiple times a day, and the way that I do that is because I've been doing this sort of inner work for 4 or 5 years. So actually, I've become, as have you, we've both become so practiced that it's more automatic for us. Like, I don't have to think about it so much anymore, because it just comes automatically. But the way to kind of train your brain, because essentially that is what we want to do. We want to train our brains to think in a certain way so that we see the world in a certain way, in a way that's going to serve us and the world. So it's really things like putting reminders in your phone. I have two apps. I have an app called I Am, and I have an app called Motivation, both of which are constantly popping up positive affirmations on my phone every 45 minutes, every day, every week, every month, 24/7. Makes a massive difference. Also, I am obsessive, as you know, we've talked about this before too, about what I'm listening to. So, in the morning, I would really encourage people to not turn the fucking news on first thing in the morning. Don't do it, because that is going to set your tone for the day. It's going to make you feel anxious. It's going to make you feel worried. It's going to make you feel stressed. Instead of that, when you wake up in the morning, turn on a podcast that is going to be really inspirational and is going to be really motivational. It's going to make you feel good. We have to lean into the things that actually make us feel good. And then it's really, the thing is, cultivating joy is actually so simple. It's just that we forget that we need to do it, and we forget that it's a choice. And it's really simple things like going for a walk in nature and just being really mindful and noticing everything that's around you. It is noticing how amazing your pet is and how much you love your pet, and just looking at them and just going, oh my god, you're so wonderful. We can cultivate joy with this. It's all about being grateful actually for the really simple everyday things. Those are the things we want to focus on, those everyday things that we forget to appreciate because we're too busy being stressed. We're too busy by being taken away by this or that or the other, or the news or the TV or whatever it is. So really, it is a question of just making a conscious decision to choose where you're placing your focus, because what we just don't realize is that what we're placing our focus on is making us think certain thoughts, which is making us feel a certain way. It's having such a massive impact. So we have to take responsibility for our own selves. And again, going back to the quote, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is is people who have come alive. So think about the things that make you feel alive and do them. Like it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be literally doing a workout that makes you feel good. It can be listening to a podcast that makes you feel good and alive and inspired. It can be going for a walk. It can be reading a book, whatever it is. Do something that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel joyful, and do it every fucking day. Not 24/7. Yes, we all have to work, or most of us have to work, and that's fine. But I think it's really important to, we have to take, when you're sort of not at work, you've got to take back control of your mind. It's those moments where you're at home doing the washing up or cooking supper even. Where is your mind then? What are you focusing on when you're not actually at work? So in all that downtime, whether it's the morning when you're getting ready, or your lunch break, or when you come home, or the evening, where are you placing your focus in those moments? Because obviously, when we're at work, we kind of just get sucked back into the program. We get sucked back into the matrix. We just go on autopilot. But when we're not there doing whatever it is that we have to do to pay the mortgage, we've got to start noticing where we're placing our focus in those other times during the day, and make sure that we're choosing to at least spend a little bit of time every day doing something that makes us feel good. Because again, what is best for the whole world is people who are feeling good, because people who are feeling good in themselves are doing good. They're serving other people.
Yeah, exactly. And this, by the way, is not toxic positivity, which
No,
some people might go, oh my God, it's not brushing over the crap stuff and not feeling our feelings. It's not
not
that.
at
It's
all.
totally different, because that, if toxic positivity is when you're not acknowledging when things actually are really, really not going well, and you
Yeah,
need to feel those feelings. This is more about changing your perspective, changing, as you said, the lens through which you are seeing
yeah,
the world. And are you a glass half full, or are you a glass half empty? And a lot of people will say, oh, I've always been a glass half empty. And if that's you, if you're somebody who says that, then how can you change that so you're glass half full? How can you shift that focus? Because actually you totally get to choose. And for me, it has been absolutely transformational. When I'm faced with something which either might make me feel a little bit nervous or anxious or scared or pissed off, having that awareness, once you've built that into your everyday, is just so powerful because you get to have a moment where you can take that step back and go, okay, okay, I'm feeling a little bit anxious now, but do I really need to feel like that? Can I slightly shift my focus? Can I slightly reframe this
Mm,
so that I can see the good that might come out of the situation? And that is often the biggest learning
mm,
when we can actually say actually this is actually doing me more good than harm. And for example, as I was saying in our first our first round before we went Instagram kicked me out, I said goodbye to my middle child yesterday at the airport. He's off for a few months off to Thailand and Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, all those countries on his own. And I honestly was like, oh my God, I could be really sitting here wallowing because I'm going to miss him so much and worry about him. But actually, I've just got to keep focusing on the fact that it's going to do him the world of good and he is going to have the best time. And as I said to him, there are going to be moments which are really shit. And you're going to be so out of your comfort zone.
mm,
But just always try in those moments to just take a step back and go, okay, this is a shit moment.
mm,
I am so out of my comfort
mm,
zone. But on the other side of this, I'm going to firstly have learned so much about myself and that I'm able to get through it because it's like you always will get through it. And it's like, what can you take from those lessons?
mm,
Look at it from that point of view rather than going, oh my God, this is shit and I want to go home and this isn't that terrible, and like what's happening to me. There's
yeah,
always something good on the other side.
yeah,
You'll learn something about yourself. So yeah, I think also in terms of trying to get into that state where things feel good, just try and notice in your everyday what those things are.
mm,
So if you are, for example, somebody who goes, well, I don't really know what makes me good, it just all feels a bit of a grind. Think back to those times when you have felt good. It might even be having to go back as far as childhood and think, what were the things which really light up your soul? So I've recently restarted playing the piano. That's bringing me so much joy. And again, it's just I'm not particularly good, but I love it. I get so lost in the moment. It's those activities or those things that you do where suddenly time just flies by. You're so lost in it. It just fills up your soul. So it's about trying to find more of those
yeah,
sorts of things. For me, I'm so lucky that I love what I do work-wise. When I'm leading a breathwork session or those moments, they just fly by.
yeah,
So it's about reminding yourself of those things that you just love to do. Is it just sinking
mm,
into a book and loving reading a book
mm,
for a little while instead of watching a really scary, terrifying thing on TV?
mm.
That's and I love a good drama, don't get me wrong. I do love a good drama.
Same.
But more and more, I've just become, I don't want to watch stuff which makes me feel really bloody crap at the end of it.
Yeah,
I want to watch stuff which really fills me up.
yeah,
And or if you do watch a really good drama which does make you feel scared or whatever, then great, that's fine. But make sure that afterwards you kind of bring yourself back to a place
yeah,
where you're feeling good again. It's all those feelings are really important. It's sending energy out into the world,
yeah,
and it's as I say, I just like to see it like you're just shining your light
yeah,
outwards,
yeah,
and that is so powerful. And then to think
yeah,
about the ripples
yeah,
of the other people who you come into in your day to day, and it might be family members, it might be the person you speak to in the coffee shop. They all those people will be affected by your
yeah.
energy. It's really
It's
powerful.
it is. It's so powerful. It's so true. And like you say, the more you know, when we are feeling really good in ourselves, like you say, we are literally spreading that out into the world because your vibe, your energy is what you are literally putting out into the world. And when you're feeling joyful and you're feeling good, then you are literally passing that on someone. It could be that someone's having a really shit day and they have an interaction with you and you end up being really kind or funny or whatever it is. That can then change their mood and therefore their day. So it really, really is a ripple effect. And going back to what you were saying about toxic positivity, yeah, this is not toxic positivity, because we are not saying you have to be happy 24/7. That's obviously a load of bollocks and not possible. And bad shit is always going to happen. Always. It's coming for all of us. We cannot escape it. But what we can do is try and live from the most positive mindset we possibly can, which doesn't mean being positive all the time. Not at all. I'm not positive all the time. You're not positive all the time. But what it means is that actually when you come from when you cultivate a more positive mindset, actually, apart from anything else, it helps you deal with the shite that life throws at you better. You know, for example, you might fail at something might go wrong, and if you have a really negative mindset, which by the way I used to, then you might be like, oh my god, everything's so shit, why is this always happening to me? That is the result of a negative mindset. Whereas when you have a positive mindset and something really shit happens and something fails in your business or you fuck up or whatever it is, you're much more likely to go, okay, that's really annoying, but you know what? I'm not going to allow this to get to me. This doesn't mean everything. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. What can I learn from this? That's the difference. It is the difference between living a life where you cultivate a positive mindset or where you're living from a negative mindset. And to circle back to, the reason we're having this conversation off the back of this quote, like, ask yourselves, yes, the world may be in a shit state, but actually, how much time are you spending simply focusing on all of the bad crap and actually having conversations about how shit everything is, and therefore putting more of the negativity out into the world? Ask yourself, how much time are you spending engaging in conversations and ruminating on all the shit that is happening? Like, if you're freaking out about what's going on in the States, how many hours in the day are you allowing yourself to be distracted by that? How much are you allowing yourself to think about Donald Trump and what the fuck is going to happen to the world because he's back in power? How much focus are you putting on him? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because it is not going to help you. It is not going to help the world. And it's sure as hell not going to stop whatever he's going to do. But the best thing to do is to take your focus off of that, or off of the fact that, yes, prices are really high and blah, blah, blah. We know that. We don't need to go on and on and on. We don't need to go over and over and over it. Actually, what we want to do is go inwards and do everything that we can to make ourselves feel as good as possible, because then we're literally putting more joy out into the world, which again is the best way and the only way that this world is ever going to change.
And also on that, you might think, oh, how are little me going to make such a big difference? But actually, if you think the more people who do
Yeah,
this, who radiate and shine their light, all of that energy is just going to just have a bigger
yeah,
impact. So yes, everybody was as important as everybody else. And the world needs people to be in their flow state, to be creating, designing,
yeah,
making, having those amazing creative thoughts, innovation. That's how we have got to where we've got to
yeah,
in our, in this, you know, society today, because of people who've been in those flow states. Because if everyone was just doing what they thought they ought to be doing and just going through the motions, then nothing new happens. It's just,
yeah,
trudging along. And actually that's what the beauty is of this world, is creativity and moving forward. We're human beings who grow and thrive on growth. So
yeah,
that's what we're here for, I believe.
yeah,
So it's just about remembering that. And yeah, sometimes you have to kind of knuckle down and get on with what you're getting on with, but it doesn't mean that you can't feel good about it and continue to nurture those things in your life which really do make you fill you up, fill
yeah,
your soul, make you feel fulfilled. Giving out to other people, ultimately that's what makes most of us feel good, is when
exactly.
you're giving out to other people and
Yeah,
sharing your love. And
so
so yeah.
true, so true. Well, I think we've done our half hour. We're going to be back on Thursday, aren't we? Because we've got to get
We
an extra one because we can't
are.
do. We're not doing this time next week, but we'll be back the following Monday. So we're doing another
Yes.
one this coming Thursday.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been a joy.
Perfect.
I'll see you back here Thursday at 10:30. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely.
All right,
Thank
babes.
you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Lots of love. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.